So, it's always so interesting to me when like a plan comes together, right? Because in preparing for this particular training, we've had some discussions and but each of us kind of did our own presentation. And thank you so much, Josh, for the presentation, because what I'm going to spend the bulk of my time talking about are some of those services that we just raised as far as what the concerns were. But if I don't follow my slide presentation, I'll go off and we'll be talking for a long time and you won't get your break. So I'm going to try to stick to my slides. All right, Melissa said she will help me. This is Melissa Rutan. I wanted to introduce her. She's providing technical support today. She is also, her title is MITEAM Quality Analyst, and she'll explain a little bit more about that, but basically she is tasked with helping the department, and she is spread thin because she's covering Livingston County as well as Washtenaw County. But she's tasked with helping our department, our particular offices in Livingston and Washtenaw, to follow the MITEAM practice model, which is something that the department spent well over 2 years rolling out as a training for our staff. And there's 2 years is a long time to be working on rolling out anything. But we've made it through that phase of things, and now we're in the fidelity phase of it, where we're trying to gather data, check back to make sure that we are staying true to making the changes that we committed to make. And so she is helping us with that and is an integral part in helping us prepare for today's training. So thank you, Melissa. What I wanted to do, first of all, is to just share some statistics with you, because who doesn't love statistics, right? This is just a glance at our numbers over the last 3 years. This is 2016, 17, and 18, the years that we have all the data for. And the average complaints per month, these are the number of complaints just for Washtenaw County that get called into centralized intake. So you see it's kind of been going up. 2016, it was 281, 17, 295, 18, 307. The assigned investigations per month, those are the actual referrals that come to our CPS staff that get assigned for them to actually do an investigation. You can see those are pretty consistent as well, 160, 159, 170. So those are the cases where every CPS worker, except, well, potentially every CPS worker, goes out and does an investigation. We have caseload compliance requirements, and so basically for an investigator, which those are the CPS workers who are just doing investigations, they're not providing ongoing services, they're doing the investigations, we are required to keep them at a 12-to-1 ratio. And for ongoing, which is where they potentially could do an investigation, but then the case is open for services, that ratio is 17-to-1. But of those investigations, of the confirmed cases per month, in 16, 17, and 18, again, kind of consistent, 40, 42, and 36. So that's where, at the end of the investigation, it was determined that there was abuse or neglect that had occurred. Now, of those cases, the average number of petitions that were filed per month, you can see, were 5, 5, and 6. So the point from all of this is to show what the next slide shows, is that 96 to 97% of the work that is done by CPS happens without a petition ever being filed. I know the point of intersection for most of the people that are in this room together today is in that smaller percentage point, but I wanted to make sure to share with you all that there is just tons and tons of work that happens within the CPS world that never results in a petition being filed with the court. Oh. Lovely technology. Just real quick, I didn't want to leave the foster care side of things out. Wanted to share with you just for 2017 and 2018 the differences as far as the average number of confirmed victims per month. In 2017 it was 65, in 18 is 55. And then the average number of children in care per month is, in 17 was 147 and in 18, 149. So kind of consistent. I have been here in Washtenaw County since 2011. And at one point we were up to pushing right around 250 children in foster care. So we've stayed pretty consistent the last few years that it's been around 150 or lower. As of the end of January, we had 130 children in foster care. What those numbers, what you need to keep in mind with those numbers is it's an average number per month. So if a child enters foster care in January, they're going to count for January, February, March, and so it's not new children each month. It's children carry over from month to month. We also have situations where children come into care for a very short period of time. They may come into care at the beginning of a month and be returned home by the end of the month. So just to give some context for those numbers. Here's where I wanted to spend most of my time is talking about these services. Because as you probably are all aware, MDHHS is a huge organization. We are even bigger now since we merged with Community Health and are able to provide a variety of services. But because the area of CPS is very, very focused on looking at child protection, we have to rely on other parts of our own department as well as the community to try to provide services that are needed with regard to the families. So some of the examples are, suppose the need identified is housing. We always want to try to work with any of our community-based partners because one of our biggest reasons is we are wanting to try to strengthen families so that they are able to go on and continue to do whatever they need to do without us ever being involved in their lives again. We want to provide the support, but we want to make sure and educate them as well as far as what they may be able to do as far as getting services on their own. So with regard to housing, we work with the Housing Alliance of Washtenaw County. It's a single point of entry. Anything housing related, we connect the family with that particular organization. They have a number of partner organizations that are able to look at not only service delivery but also different funding streams and can help with different types of housing needs. Within MDHHS, we have what we call our State Emergency Relief Program, and I'm sure you're probably all very familiar with, we love alphabet soup at MDHHS. Everything has an acronym. If it doesn't have an acronym, we're going to give it an acronym. So, but the State Emergency Relief Program is a financial program where we're able to assist people with security deposits, first month's rent, eviction prevention. We even have had situations in the past where we've had sufficient funds where after we're utilizing the SER funds, we're able to help with back taxes for homeowners. So there's just a lot of different housing related resources that we have. Specifically with regard to child welfare, we have a specific funding stream, our family reunification funds, that we look at to utilize. I said I will spend anyone's money, anytime, anywhere. However, I always like to try to spend somebody else's money before I spend my own money. Meaning, we try to look to see if there's any federal funds, spend the federal funds first, then state funds, and then county funds. And so family reunification funds come through the state. It's kind of a blending of different funding sources. But we also like to be try to be creative. And something that's very exciting and does give some hope as far as some of the concerns with always trying to do the same thing is that this past year, literally just 6 months ago, we partnered with the Ann Arbor Housing Commission, and there was a grant request that went in, and Washtenaw County was awarded 32 housing vouchers, HUD vouchers, that are specific for child welfare involved families or youth who are aging out of foster care. We're the only county in the state that applied, and we were awarded that. Now, HUD is a whole nother federal program that has all kinds of requirements, and so we are kind of working out the how to do this. I described it as we're changing the tires on the bus while the bus is rolling down the road, because there's very strict timeframes and we have to use those vouchers in a relatively short period of time. So, putting a plug in, if you have families that you're involved with that you know could benefit from a HUD voucher, please share that information, jot it down, put it on a card, include your contact information, because we are looking to lease up those 32 vouchers. Our goal is by June of this year. To last, my recollection, we have made 5 referrals already. 4 of those 5 already have resulted in a voucher. We literally had someone who walked into the office at like 10 o'clock in the morning and walked out at 1 o'clock in the afternoon with a voucher in hand. Now, there was a ton of paperwork that had to be done, and that's where we're working. We had some folks come to give a training at MDHHS, and some of our CPS and foster care and prevention staff learned all the ins and outs of the application process and really helped move that along. But that is an example of some of the ways that we're able to identify what the needs are, where we work with existing services in the community and within our own department, but are also open to looking at creative solutions. So again, you know, this is our community, so we're wanting to partner in any way that we can to try to provide the needed services. So that was just one example of, with regard to housing. Food is another. Again, there's community partners. FAP is our food assistance program. That is a program that the department does administer. It is requires an application, but we're able to assist with that. Within child welfare, we also have utilized Meyer gift cards, whereby we have purchased gift cards so that we have them on hand. Our on-call staff that goes out overnight, if there's a family in need overnight, that they need diapers or food, they're able to utilize those Meyer gift cards immediately on the spot. With regard to medical, we partner with the Washtenaw Health Department. If the individual or family does not meet the particular criteria for the next program, which is within MDHHS, which is the Medicaid program, we work with the Washtenaw Health Department to see if there's some other community resources that might be available to that family. And then we also specifically we have different funding available for different medical needs, specifically for children who come into foster care, and we look at providing a lot of support if they're medically involved. A number of other needs that there could be, and there were just way too many for me to list out every single one, but some of the community-based partnerships that we have is working with 211. Hopefully everyone's familiar with that. That's administered through United Way, whereby they maintain a listing of different community resources. And the listing of those resources is something that is now available through, it's called a portal. When we have our electronic application process at MDHHS in Washtenaw County, we have roughly 20 kiosks in our lobby that folks can come in. They can get technical assistance if they need help filling out an application electronically online. And while they're in that portal, suppose they came in to apply for food assistance, but they need food today, there is a part of that portal that will allow them to go into the same resources that 211 has listed, where they can find out and leave with the information of a local church or a local community partner who would be having food distribution that day. So that's a relatively new improvement with regard to our technology that is really helping out a lot. We also work with Barrier Busters. Hopefully you all are familiar with Barrier Busters. Again, it's a group of community partners who come together with a variety of different funding streams and try to work together to provide the services that are needed for the families that we all serve together. Additionally, we have different times when we also partner with other groups, and one of the ones I wanted to mention with regard to this was that we have recently partnered with the University of Michigan School of Social Work and are one of the counties in the state that was piloting a suicide prevention tool, whereby we were able to do a survey with youth who are in foster care, because as you can imagine, we were talking about how traumatic it is for removals when they happen, is looking at trying to do some assessment and having an immediate crisis response, whereby we partner with community mental health and can get those individuals in immediately for an assessment, which is something that hadn't been done before. So we're very proud to be able to partner with University of Michigan School of Social Work for that. And then I wanted to share some of our services that are specific to trauma, and again, we'll hear a little bit more about that in just a little bit. Some of the broad services that you may or may not be aware of is the Handle with Care initiative. That is an initiative that Washtenaw County has taken part in, whereby what happens is if law enforcement has a situation overnight, or actually at any time that involves a child, they have a point of contact with each of the schools, and there is a notice sent to the school that a particular child had a traumatic experience. It does not give any type of identifying information as far as what happened, just that so that the teachers and school staff are aware that that child may need to be handled with care the next day. There may be behaviors that are displayed that either are completely new for this child or that are heightened because of the trauma that they might have experienced previously. And then if the school feels that there's further assessment that's needed, there is a network set up in order to get that child the assistance that they need immediately. So that's a wonderful community-based service that it took a lot of different community partners to come on board and agree to do that. For those of you who may not be as familiar working with school systems, they don't always take to change very well, but they just were great as far as embracing this particular service. We also in Washtenaw County have a trauma steering committee, which is comprised of many, many different organizations that come together and are looking at different aspects of trauma within our community, different administrative approaches to making sure that the different agencies are aware of and working to incorporate a trauma lens in the services that are being provided, as well as looking at gaps within services in the community related to trauma. And I believe somebody mentioned as far as the secondary trauma and support to staff, I believe it was Judge Connors, that Dr. Henry is wrapping up some training that he has been doing with regard to our first line staff, supervisors, as well as program managers and county directors about, the recognition that this is not easy work and that we need to be taking care of ourselves so that we are there to be able to take care of the children and families that come to our attention. And there is also community-based trauma training as well. With regard to the child welfare specific services, CTAC, which is Dr. Henry's, the agency with whom Dr. Henry is associated, that there is a contract actually that the state has entered into to do those trauma assessments with regard to children, and it can be based on just these specific needs that are identified through the trauma screening tool. We have a tool whereby when our CPS staff is conducting their investigation, if there's any case where the case is actually open for services, or if the child is removed and goes into foster care, the screening tool is utilized, and then we're able to make that referral to the much, much more comprehensive CTAC assessment, whereby there's also a provision for recommendation for ongoing services after that. And then the MITEAM, which again I'm going to let Melissa talk about in just a few minutes. We have a trauma sub-team, and that is similar to the trauma steering committee for the community, but for the MITEAM sub-team, it is specific within the department, and our goal with that team is to be looking at, as different policies and procedures come out or change or are updated, keeping the trauma aspect of things in mind when we're doing that. As Josh was pointing out, with regard to, you know, there's the law, and then there's our policy, and sometimes that can be very cut and dry. You do this or you do that, but there's the other aspect of it is looking at how does that affect, how is there a more supportive way to communicate a particular thing, rather than just saying this, you know, it's very cut and dry. So that is very exciting. I'm going to remind you to use those note cards that are on your table if you are interested. You would have the opportunity to join the sub-team, the MITEAM sub-team for trauma within the department, and that is an opportunity for you to give input into what the department is doing. And if you see that there's a particular gap within our community, we would love that input and be able to look to see if there's the possibility of identifying a service that could fill that gap. We don't have a lot of extra wiggle room as far as funding is concerned, but occasionally there is a chance for us to bid for, have contracts bid for different discretionary funds. And if we've done that in the past, when we found that there was a gap in services, that we have utilized those funds to be able to come up with that particular service. It's kind of along those lines as the Parent Partner Program. It's a program that was not started in Washtenaw, but Washtenaw benefited from an expansion of the contract for that, whereby individuals who have experience having had children removed before are now able to come to, alongside of current families who have children in foster care and be a great support to them. There's also just all kinds of different therapy support that we're able to provide, as well as just mentioning again about that secondary trauma training for the staff that provide the services to the family. Oh, and this is Melissa.
Hi. So, as Renee said, my name is Melissa Rutan. I work with the Department of Health and Human Services as the MITEAM Quality Assurance Analyst, and that's a new position. Previously, I was the MITEAM Specialist, where, as Renee stated, we worked on rolling out that MITEAM practice model. And I hope a lot of you in the room know what MITEAM is, but I'm sure that a lot of you don't. And so, just to briefly describe what it is, the state came out with a practice model that included competencies that they wanted everyone working in child welfare in the state to begin to follow and make it part of their everyday work with families and children. And so the MI stands for Michigan, T is for teaming, E is for engagement, A is for assessment, and M is for mentoring. And we utilize these skills not only with each other as peers, from supervisor to staff, with the families that we work with, in communicating with service providers and anyone that we're working with together to help support families and children. It's a thing that we do across the board. It's a thing that we constantly work on growing. We're not going to get it right away, and we're not going to do it right the first time. So we use feedback and speak with families. How can we do this better? How can we help you? Where can we do a better job? And all of it is done under a trauma lens. And so we always keep that at the forefront of when we're working with each other, with families, and with children, to remember that trauma piece. So just briefly, if you look at this flow chart here, it describes an informed practice, so a way that child welfare can take that trauma lens and utilize it when working with families. So this is just a really brief overview of what we do. But we want to maximize physical and psychological safety for families and children. We want to partner with families to identify trauma-related needs, and then hopefully utilize services to address those needs. Enhance child and family well-being and resilience, and so that's really key. When we're working with families, one of the things we want to do is help them become resilient so that they can then help themselves. They don't need to rely on the agency. They don't need to rely on us to point them in the right direction. They've learned now how to get their needs met, and they're able to do that so that if something comes down the road, they can face that, and they know the supports in the community that can help them do that. Next, we want to enhance the well-being and resilience of staff. And so Judge Connors commented on this, and Renee did as well, that it's really important when we're day in, day out working with families who are dealing with crisis and trauma that we absorb some of that, and that's natural. That's a natural human reaction, and it's also natural for people who come into this work and care about children and families to absorb that even more deeply. So we want to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves, that we're taking care of each other, so that we can then provide quality service to the people that we're working with. And the last part is to partner with systems that interact with these children. So we want to make sure that we're not working in silos, all with the same goal of helping this family or this child, but that we're working together to provide the best quality service that these families can receive, and so that it's done more efficiently. You know, there's nothing more frustrating than going to somewhere and saying, I need help with this particular need, and someone says, well, you need to contact this other agency, and then you go there and they say, oh, you need to contact the people you were just talking to. So we're really working together, teaming, which is one of my favorite words, but working together to provide that really quality piece, and that's where the state has changed the way that they do things with the MITEAM practice model. So if you have any questions about it, feel free to contact me. We provide our emails at the end of this presentation. I would love feedback, questions, comments from anybody, and then of course, shameless plug, if you're interested in joining any one of our sub-teams, you're welcome to do so. We have one that is in regards to trauma, one that's in regards to data, and one that's in regards to communication. And I can provide more information if you're interested on that. So thank you.
Thanks. I was going to say, the slide changed by itself.
Following our time.
Okay.
So it's keeping us.
All right, we're staying on track here. So, oh, there was the rest of your slide. Okay. So because we are being forced to stay on time, this next section we're going to go through rather quickly. My staff could probably recite our CPS policy in their sleep. The rest of you are probably pretty familiar with our policy, so I wasn't going to go into a whole lot of detail. But just to kind of recap and highlight, again, some of the things that Josh had spoken about, is that by law, the department has the responsibility to receive and respond to any complaint of child abuse or neglect by a person responsible for the child's health or welfare. So again, as a recap, CPS receives the referral, they do an investigation, makes a determination of whether abuse or neglect has occurred, and if found, provides services and supports to assure safety of the children. So again, the line is to get the referral, do an investigation, assess what the needs are, and work with the family to provide those needs. It's not get the referral, file the petition. There's a logical progression there, and that's where all those different supports and services that I mentioned previously is what we look to put in place before. And then PSM 715-3 is our particular area of policy that talks about the petitions, the hearings, and the court orders. When efforts to achieve and maintain a child's safety in their own home or with family have failed, or where the child protection law requires it, a petition must be filed. So, as I said, it is a situation where there is a lot of work that is done on the front end before the decision to file a petition is made, unless it is something that's specifically spelled out in policy. CPS takes action to protect the child, which is doing that assessment with the family, utilizing the MITEAM practice model, locates available services and supports, and those are supports that are identified by the CPS worker, but also heavily relied on, what is it the family sees? What do they need? What support do they need? I think for a very, very long time, we came to this work approaching it by, we're the experts, we're the ones that have the degree, we went to school, we should be telling folks how they need to raise their children. The MITEAM model really approaches things from, we're coming alongside of you, there's been a difficulty that's caused your family to come to our attention, what is it that you need? How can we support? How can we connect you within the community so that we can help you make sure that your child is safe? This is our policy that speaks specifically to the emergency orders, PSM 715-2. Emergency removal and placement, sometimes referred to as ex parte orders, must only occur after hours and must be based on conditions which immediately threaten the child's health or welfare. And again, that's right in line with the information that Josh was sharing with us. We do have some mandated policies which are required by MDHH staff. It is based on information that has been determined to be requirements for our staff. It is based on the Michigan Compiled Law, and one example, this is just one example that I wanted to share with you. In MCL 722-638, it's referencing submission of a petition for termination of parental rights, and this is at an initial disposition. It's required due to child protection because of severe abuse. Again, that policy item is 715-3, but the point I wanted to really send home today is with regard to the parental responsibility. The two items with regard to this is that there's a current, it's bolded, current risk of harm, and parents have failed to fix the situation that brought the child to our attention, and a previous involuntary termination of parental rights. If those two factors are in place, my staff is required by our policy to file a petition at the initial petition for termination of parental rights. Doesn't mean we're not going to work to try to provide services, but that is one example of where our policy gives us very specific steps that we have to take in particular situations. And we've given you the link if you are interested in learning more. You can find all of the pages and pages and pages of our MDHHS CPS policy. If you go to www.michigan.gov, you search for MDHHS policy manuals and then click on the Children's Protective Services link. Just wanted to give a shout out as far as teaming. Teaming to support families is the best way that we can all support families. I think we do that day in and day out. I'm really excited about this particular training because it's giving us yet another opportunity to share ideas, come together, learn some perspectives from each other, and work together, because as we work together, that is where we're going to provide the best support to the families that we serve. So remember to use your note cards if you have any questions. If you are interested in joining our continuous quality improvement team, we would welcome you. This is an opportunity for us to look at things that we have been doing. If there are gaps in services that we are looking to try to fill those gaps. We finally have been doing enough of the different follow-up tools that we have so that we have some data that we're able to look at as far as some of the things that we're trying to do differently. Is that working, or are there other tweaking or adjustments that we need to do? So we would love for you to join us. And then we are going to have a survey for you to fill out with regard to the training, and we'll really look forward to your feedback from that. I just wanted to leave you with this thought. That's okay. Coming together is a beginning, staying together is progress, working together is success. I have you for it. Thank you.